Linda Bender, author of Animal Wisdom, Learning from the Spiritual Lives of Animals. Thank you for joining me. It's a pleasure to be here. There is a compelling body of evidence that suggests human minds connect with each other and with animals across space and time. I have many stories that I often begin when I speak to people with, because who is this person standing in front of you? Well, when I was a very young girl, I had experiences out in nature with animals. My dad called me Nature Girl. He was my big advocate. So it was completely normal on a day of play for me to be out in the backyard on the edge of a forest where I grew up. And I would be invited into the world of the animals and the creatures that live there. One particular bird story that I do recall is just being so amused by the beautiful song of a bird. But it didn't stop there. That was an invitation for a young person to come closer into the world of animals and birds and experience their lives. They exist more closely connected to universe, to source, whatever you want to term it. They exist more closely in that world. And as children, as I was perfectly willing to go along and accept that invitation and become part of their world. And that was what we now call the Oneness Experience, non-duality. We have lots of names for it. But at the time, a little kid just experiences. And I think, as everyone knows, we don't learn through someone standing and teaching. We actually learn through our own personal experiences. And that's what I share in my book. And what happened to me is I inevitably carried my love of animals into becoming a veterinarian. And as I learned very young, healing and helping animals gave meaning and purpose to my life. Made me understand that all life is soul. The root word of animal, anima, means soul. We are all soul. I was once asked by Deepak Chopra, where do you draw the line? What has soul, what doesn't have soul? I say there is no line to draw. All life is soul. So in my experiences through my veterinary work, I combined my love of animals with my love of travel and a mystical spiritual path that I believe was birthed with my early experiences with animals. So I ended up living and working overseas, spent many years helping rescue wildlife from the wildlife trafficking trade, where my greatest loves were served, but also my greatest heartbreak. It's where I developed my love for conservation. I speak of it in the book, and I have a nonprofit called From the Heart, and that's part of the work that I do. You can learn about it on lindabender.org. But I'd like to share a story of what actually made me write this book. And I was in South Africa on one of my trips, and I was spending the day before I left at Kruger Park, which is one of the few places where you can still see wildlife roaming free. And it was the end of the day, and we were getting ready to leave, and I was in the back of this little Jeep rattling around. And as we were about to drive out of the park, a large herd of buffalo came across the road. And they were big ones, little ones, young, old. It was quite a display. Now, these animals are very used to seeing humans, so it was no big deal. But they stopped, and I knew that something was going on. I found, okay, there's something about this, pay attention. Well, I paid attention, and I looked around in the herd for exceptions, but everyone was looking at us. Everyone was staring intently at us. And I got at that moment a deep, deep connection that came to me as this. And it was very simply, do not forget us. Do not forget us. Teach the humans what you know. Well, instantly I knew. I understood for the first time that everything, all the blessings, all the grace, all the connections that I'd had through my life, that I felt were for me, were in fact meant for everyone, and that I had to carry this message to a bigger place. And I continued to go back to the Zulus to help me connect more deeply. And one of the things that they made me connect to more deeply was the human race. So I thought I was connected to humans, but not in any way as deeply as I needed to be to carry on the work. So it's been a delightfully interesting path, writing the book. But basically what I did is share some of the main points that animals have taught me. And it's the voice of the heart, the voice of my heart, speaking out for the animals, those who have no voice. You know, there are 3 ways, very basically, to connect to animals. One is by observation, which many people do. A second way is through a personal relationship. For example, companion animal, our dogs and our cats. I know in the US, and I think it's quite close in the UK, almost 65% of every home has at least one dog or cat. We adore our dogs and cats. And the third way, which is the way that I grew up and I understood from the animals at an early age, is this deeper soul connection. What animals are so yearning to teach us is to remember that we are souls. To come back to that place that we have forgotten. And animals often act almost like a bridge, taking us from where we are to a much deeper place, to where we are becoming. We are, whether we like it or not, changing from physical, mental beings to intuitive, spiritual beings. They help us along that path. They are incarnate with us. Carl Jung once said, "Those whom the gods cannot lead, they drag." So animals are here to help us. In the book I talk, of course, first about unconditional love. Everyone is seeking to be loved in whatever way they seek it. We all want to be loved and cared about and needed. Animals are the great teachers, the dogs, the great bodhisattvas of unconditional love. I like to share my own story of being in my closet, getting ready for a talk, and all that's wrong with me comes bubbling up, you know? And I have nothing to wear, I don't look good, why did I even bother getting up today? It's just, I'm a disaster. I am a disaster. And my little dog would sit there looking at me saying, "What's wrong with you? You are the incarnation of perfection to me, woman. Be happy with who you are." Oh yeah, I forgot that. I live in this world of time and space. We look to our animals for that unconditional love because all of us, in my experience, are broken. And we have to carry on in that brokenness regardless. And animals teach us that joy. There are Linda-isms in the book I speak of. One of them is the joy of aliveness. Look at a bird in a tree. True joy. Mystery. I love telling stories about mystery because animals are comfortable in mystery. And humans, you know, I believe that our species' genius, what we do best, every species has their genius, but what we humans do really well is think. And we have wonderful capacity for compassion, but we get ourselves into trouble because we think so much. But the good side of that is that we are able to come up with seeing a problem, coming up with a very creative solution, and implementing it, which is what we are all, I believe, those of us who are all in this world now are born to do. We all have that special gift to share. And so being comfortable in mystery is something we need to learn. Kierkegaard said on the subject, there comes a time when we learn, and it's wonderful that we learn, but suddenly we reach a point and it's reversed because we realize we cannot know everything. We simply don't have the equipment. And to be comfortable in that is to be more open to then receive as the spiritual beings that I believe we are. Death is something that animals have much to teach us about, particularly in our Western culture, where we push death under the rug. We don't want to think about it. We do everything in our power to put it out there. But it's so much a part of life. We cannot have life without death, without dying. And animals, particularly our companion friends, are often the first to teach us about death and dying because of their shorter lifespans. I deal with this so often. Personally, I've had, how many countless animals die in my arms. Particularly as a veterinarian, I don't want to lose any animal. But they teach that this is a part of life. And I believe in what they have taught me personally is that when I practice dying, when I allow things to be eliminated from my life in many different capacities, that when I'm more comfortable with that, when I can not fear dying, I'm not as afraid to live. And that's when we really, really can step forward into the soul beings that I know that we truly are. So there's much that animals teach. So what I have done with that wisdom, and I've been about a year now on the road speaking to people, learning a tremendous amount about the needs of those particularly who are out helping animals and advocating for animals, how we need to be resilient at this time in our transition, in our transformation to who we can become. And so what I try to teach people is how to utilize the gifts that animals have taught me and will teach you to developing our own personal gifts and talents that we came into this life with. Every single one of us has our own unique gift and talent to share with the world, because if we don't, if we miss that opportunity, no one else can do it for us. So there's much work to be done to help animals. And if you go to my website, you can learn more about what I do. But I tell everyone, and I have a whole chapter in Animal Wisdom about things everybody can do. Simple things that we can do to help ourselves and to help the environment, to help life in general. And I also have a chapter on simple practices, because people want always to learn how to connect intuitively with animals. My intuitive experiences with animals have always been soul connections. For example, if I am at a shelter and I'm with a group of dogs, I won't learn specific details about this or that or anything they want to eat for dinner. What I will learn is that deep, deep soul connection, maybe the sadness, the connection, and the oneness that compassion connects. Because I always say to people, if they want to get an animal to take home and love, go first to your local shelter. That's where you truly find the evolved animal souls. who have much to teach us and so much love to share. Yeah. And so the other thing I speak of is how important it is to pay attention to every single decision we make every day. Constantly people are saying to me, I want to help animals, I want to help the world, but I'm so overwhelmed. What can I do? What one thing can I do? I'm just one little person. So I say the number one thing you can do, aside from going inward and beginning the process of meditation, because when we go inside and we meditate, we begin the conversation with our own hearts and our own souls. And then we realize that we ultimately are responsible for our own decisions, and the decisions we make every day are very important. For example, what you choose to buy, what you choose to eat. I tell people if there's one thing you can do not only for yourself, but the planet, stop eating meat. Stop eating meat, because not only are you eliminating those toxins that are put in those animals, you're helping the environment because of all the destruction of habitat and all the other issues that go on. That's a whole other topic. But it's very, very important, because another thing I discuss in the book is the reciprocity. What we do to animals, we ultimately do to ourselves. And when we ingest animals that have been abused and have toxic hormones, stress, and all of the above in their bodies, when we ingest that animal, it becomes part of our own bodies. And that's not an opinion. That is physiology. It's what happens. It cannot be otherwise. So what we're doing every day makes a huge, huge difference in what's going on in the world. So I ask people to please, yes, help animals. Do something good to help animals, because it will ultimately help all of us. And listen to the voice in your heart. Don't be afraid to go inward and find that person who has something very deep and meaningful to say, and then not let fear stop you. To just take that step forward and express who you are in this world, and it will ultimately make a huge difference. And I also advise you practice some of the techniques I have in the book. They're very simple, very, very simple. I'm also a meditation teacher, and I know people will get a little nervous about meditation, probably not in this crowd, but often people do. But it's truly how we take that first step to reconnect. So I really hope you enjoy the book. I hope you enjoy getting to know your soul, connecting with it more with the help of the animals and nature. Meditations, prayers, and intentions are magnified and intensified in nature. I suggest you do that. And speak the voice in your heart, I always say, and don't be afraid to make a lot of noise. Thank you. So the question is, number one, praise. Thank you for animal wisdom. I love the question. The question is, where do I sit, where do we sit with the extremes going on, the wonderful insight, the tremendous scientific evidence that psychic phenomena is real. And Rupert Sheldrake is a friend of mine, and actually I'm going to see him in a few days. And long discussions, because we are transforming into this being that we are recognizing. My son is a budding physicist, and we have these conversations all the time. Some say electrons, protons, all the things that we're made of at the subatomic level connect throughout the universe. So why should something like these simple connections with other beings and all not be real? So all this fabulous stuff is going on. On the other hand, there's the horrible destruction, where this is where it is hugely important for myself to have a personal, private practice. I cannot start my day without meditation, prayer, and also the concept that what I am doing, the work I am doing, is not about where I end up. It's not about outcome. It's about what I'm doing today. And again, that's the power of living in the present moment. If I start to think about how shattered I am, how devastated I am at the destruction for elephants and rhino, I'm down on my knees all the time. But the only thing that keeps me going, and there's a story, I speak of this with my story and with the birds in the East, and I truly, really did break. But there is a way that you continue. You don't stop in your brokenness. You carry it through, and that's where we learn through the practice. And I teach people this. I work with advocates a lot because a lot of them stay down in the brokenness, and we cannot. Because if we do, then we're certainly in trouble. But I believe in the resilience of the human heart. I do believe. I always have hope. And in the Native American tradition, it is it's one of the worst sins you can do to take away the hope from people. The leaders speak on this. I believe as long as there are human hearts beating, there's hope for the world. And that's how I live day to day with a very, very, very intense personal practice. I hope that answers. Yeah. This is a good point. It's, yes, there is cruelty in the natural world. And I talk about prey-predator relationship in the book because it's been greatly distorted, prey-predator. So there's that. But, animals live in joy, yes, and all of the above. But rotten, horrible things happen in their lives. Yes, animals do bad things, just like in the human world. We have wonderful people, we have not so great people. We have all different levels of consciousness. In my experience in the animal world, it's very similar. There are also different levels of consciousness and awareness. And things happen. Yes, it's there. Cruelty happens, yes.
But is it
With humans is that, animals can no longer live in blissful ignorance of us. For example, in Africa, back in the day, less than 100 years ago, there were millions of elephants. Today, there are under 200,000. We are, as humans, too many. So a lot of the problems, and the reason my work is focused on that versus, what's going on in the cruelty of animals, because the problems that we face, the huge problems we face now, are human-based problems, and those are the most critical problems to solve. And there are just too many of us now to do otherwise. And there is a tremendous amount of friction in the communities where humans and the large land mammals have run out of space. So there's tremendous conflict there. For example, elephants. There was a big thing recently about elephants were recently found to pass the mirror recognition test. Oh my God, what does that mean? So being able to recognize yourself as a being in a mirror, science says, that is prerequisite for the ability to have a spiritual life. Oh my! Well, any child, I think, would know this. So we're coming out with these things that, perhaps I don't believe them, never had to. They've always been part of my life. So why should we not? We share the same neurohormones, the same neurotransmitters as these animals. Why should they not be experiencing what we are experiencing? I'm not saying anthropomorphize. I always have trouble with that word. But anthropomorphizing animals, they are unique beings, but they have meaning and purpose of their own, aside from the meaning and purpose we assign them. So I always laugh when we are suddenly discovering that they have intelligence, they can do this. Crows came out with meta-tool use, meaning, so we keep failing as humans in our attempt to be superior to other beings. We're very different than other beings, but we grasp onto this superior attitude, and we're losing. We're losing. Prairie dogs, have the most elaborate communication skills that you could imagine. So all of these beings, yes, but we have to own it and then do something about it. And it's happening with elephants. I see all the time with the circus elephants. The dolphins in captivity. Huge movements to stop. Zoos is another matter. I actually at one time wanted to be a zoo vet and worked, well, I have over the years worked peripherally with zoos. There are many, many zoos that need to go away. Really need to go away. But on the other hand, there are some very good zoos that are doing good things for animals. Obviously, it's not where we want animals to be. But in some cases, for example, in Cincinnati, the woman who does research there came up with in vitro fertilization for Sumatran rhinos. Yeah, successfully did that. So, and zoos can be a place to teach, teach ecology, teach how to preserve animals, particularly with kids. So I think they have a place, but we have to be very careful about how we run zoos. Yeah.
Definitely no dolphins in captivity.
Definitely. I'm sorry, but SeaWorld needs to go away. Yeah. Yeah. That is my humble opinion. Yeah. Not so humble opinion. Yes. I do believe in reincarnation. And it isn't that I believe in it, it has been my experience. And so therefore, again, I'm not so much a believer, but I have had enough experience to say I do, yes, there is reincarnation. I don't necessarily think that there is interspecies reincarnation. I know in the Buddhist tradition they say if you are a human and you've lived a not such a great life, you can come back as an animal. I'm not quite as comfortable with that. I don't know because I live in the unknown, but I'm comfortable living on the periphery of the known. So I like being out there questioning, but I have not had any personal experience where that is the case. And I also have never experienced that any one species or life form, that there is a value of one being lesser or greater or more important or less important than another. They are different, but it's all part of the true oneness. And so to me, I don't see one species coming back as a penalty to be another species. It doesn't work with my
It doesn't have to be a penalty.
reality.
It just could be something random, though, as well.
Yes, it could be an experience. It could be, well, I want this experience. See, these are things I don't know. I think it's an interesting question. In my experience, I have not. More of what I have experienced are animals coming back as animals to be near humans that they have loved, and animals coming to bring messages to humans from the other side. And also my what I call almost downloads, because there really aren't words for a lot of these things, but things that I get from animals now, more so now, are I'll sometimes get something and I won't know if that animal is alive in this time-space dimension or they've crossed over. It comes the same. Difficult to explain. But yes, they come back. And I have stories. I could share lots of stories. I did an interview. I did a radio interview. And this is great. And we were chatting afterward, and she told me the story. She asked if I would help her with her cat, who's having some issues, and I said, great, well, share one of your great stories with me. And she went through the story of how her beloved cat, she had this cat for 18 years, and he died. And the cat came in a dream to her, random dream, she wasn't seeking this, but she dreamed that she was told to go to a certain rescue at a certain day. It was a Saturday. And baby back. And she went, and there was one cat, and he came back. But there were signs. It wasn't that simple. He came in and did exactly. Went to the favorite spot the other cat went to. I mean, it was very clear to her that this cat gave messages that I'm back. Yeah. Yeah. Many like that. Yeah. So it's just, welcome to my world. It's part of my, it's part of, yeah. Yes. I'm not practicing anymore. I'm doing all this great writing and advocacy work, but, what communication is for me with animals is what it's always been. It's been a heart and soul connection that really does not require words. But obviously there are times when I need words. But the words, you have to remember, animals are not reading books. They're not speaking or knowing English. They're sending intentions, pictures often. But the words I assign. And that's where you have to be careful not to